You know, Steve, one of the things that I felt was always part of my job, and I think it's part of every statewide officer's job, is to involve themselves in the communities where their members live, and also to encourage their members to be more active in their community, both in terms of as a CSEA representative, let's say as an officer of the union. I think that will raise the awareness of some of the community leaders in the good sides of unions, all right, which is the basic reason why I have concentrated in this region at least every couple of years for the past 20 years, trying to single out a project that we could impact on that would benefit the communities that our members live in. For an example, probably the first issue was the breast cancer research project here in the Onondaga County area. Gosh, we did things from book sales to food sales to all kinds of projects that not only raised the awareness of the importance of working on breast cancer research, but it also involved our regional, let's say, women's committee in bringing the issue to the forefront of the other delegates' minds that they might not have. The issue of the Blodgett School project, which basically Mark Coatson brought to my attention one day because he had had an inquiry from someone trying to raise money. A big part of CSEA's membership are peoples that work in schools. And we have always been proud and said very out front that the janitors, the secretaries, the school bus drivers, the cafeteria workers are just as important as the teachers, just as important as the administrators. And what we did is we attempted to mobilize our school employees throughout the entire region to make a commitment to one school where we could really make a difference. Blodgett School Library Project was that one. Blodgett School at that time, I think, was the 5th poorest school district in the entire state of New York. And it happened to be located right in the center of our region, right in the center of one of our major counties. And we just embarked on a commitment where we would hopefully raise $5,000 within a year. We exceeded that by almost double and was able to buy books and to buy equipment and computers for the Blodgett Library. Some of the other issues that we've dealt with, we've had ongoing campaigns in the region for instances that occurred, let's say. We had a terrible situation in this region where so many of our members were impacted negatively with the floods that occurred in Binghamton, Tioga County, Shenango, Broome, that entire southern tier area.
Back in 2006.
Yeah, where our members' homes were literally overnight destroyed. And just dozens and dozens of people that were CSEA members all of a sudden found themselves without a place to live. So it's not an easy task to try to raise money for issues or for people. But quickly we formed a regional committee. I gave them a job to do. I told them, raise as much as you can. Whatever we're able to give by Christmas of 2006 to our members is going to be appreciated. And like over a 9-month period, we were able to raise over $65,000, which was unheard of. Big part of that came from AFSCME. Our international union saw what we were doing and reached out to help us. Our statewide union under President Donahue saw what we were trying to do and reached out to help us. But the feeling I got that Christmas holiday was writing those checks and knowing that those checks were going to help out CSEA members who certainly never expected it from their union. But again, I think that it met the criteria. As a unionist, we have many roles to play. We have to be concerned about the safety and health of our members. We have to ensure their benefits through negotiations. We have to be cognizant of their need for increased wages on their retirement, all those things. We have to provide them a safe, healthy place to work, but we also have to be concerned about their lives, their families, their spouses, their significant others. And I think that's the role of a union. And by raising money and dealing with community projects, I think that this region has done that, and I'm rather proud of that.
When you do projects like that, does that help with other union activity like mobilization over
team building?
contract
It's
issues?
tremendous.
You're all right. You want to leave it there?
Okay,
Yeah. I mean,
sure. Is it okay?
Yep.
Team building through raising money is a tremendous venture that you basically decide to commit to for hundreds of hours over a course of a month, and you're working with the same union activist on that project. Now, that person in this region could be from Potsdam, like Colleen Wheaton, or it could be from Broome County, like a LRS staff member, like Joanne Mastronardi. In this region, everyone worked, both the staff and the elected officials, the staff working in the offices, our communication specialists. And what it did is it helped to bring them together as a group, as a functioning unit. This touched everything that we attempted to do. Our own Region 5 mobilization plan is a good example of that. Several years ago, our statewide president asked us, statewide officers, to go back to our regions, sit down with our region directors, sit down with our auxiliary staff, and put together a plan where we tried to mobilize actual rank and file members, all right? To give you an example, the need for it. If I have a picket line, informational picket line, that I want to throw up around a school in Oswego County that has been unable to reach a contract, and we have to start lobbying the legislators and lobby the school officials or lobby the village mayor or lobby the county executive, there only may be 60 or 70 people in that unit. Well, if I can get everyone out, which you can't get everyone out to voice their own concerns, I'm going to have 50 people. Wouldn't it be better to have 100 people or 150 people or 250 people on the informational picket line? You certainly stand a better chance of getting press coverage. They're not going to go to a picket line where there's 3 people walking around, but they just might come out if they hear that the last time there was a picket that there were 150 people there carrying signs, chanting, letting their voice be heard. I sat down with my region director, my office manager, my communications specialist, my political action specialist, and we decided to form a committee that once every week would come up with a project on how to mobilize our members. We came up with, I think, probably the most effective plan in the state. If every region had done that, I think that we'd probably be sitting today, CSEA, with 3,000 or 4,000 people mobilized on any given minute's moment through an email or a phone call to give something of themselves for their union. Unfortunately, some of the regions chose not to do that. That's their loss. Within months, we quickly realized that if you reach out and ask rank and file members to give you an hour a month or 3 or 4 hours a month or, of their time, not even their money, but their time. That's all we were looking for. Members will respond. Excuse me, one of the highlights I can remember over the past years is being in a grocery store with my wife and being approached by a woman that came up to me and said, "Mr. Moore," and she had a pin on her pocketbook, and it was the pin that we gave out to people that signed up as mobilizers. She says, "You don't know me, but I am a member of the Region 5 Mobilization Committee." This was in a grocery store, all right? And she had told me she had been to several pickets in the Utica area and the Syracuse area. Now, when you've got 200 or 300 people standing around and the press is trying to have me do interviews or I'm circling with that group of people, I don't get to know every person that's there voicing their opinion, This woman was probably there. I never would have known that unless she came up and thanked me. She thanked me for her giving up time. There's a tremendous lesson to be learned from that, Steve. There's a tremendous lesson. Every region should have a plan like that. Now, when we have the need for people to show up and add their voice to the situation, Mark, our communications specialist, sends them an email giving the directions to the location, giving the time that we think will be there, and also telling them that if something happens between now and the time the email goes out, that we will let them know it's canceled.
Sure.
Our membership program has worked fantastically.
Certainly, these are different times with more instant communication, but let me take you back to the late 1970s, and one of the great accomplishments of CSEA was the enactment of the Public Employee Safety and Health Act. What do you remember about that fight, the activism that it took to make that the law?
Well, I think probably what stands out with the creation and signing of the law is tragically all that had to occur before it was implemented and voted in. to be very truthful. Couple instances on a New Year's Eve at 1 o'clock in the morning in this region. I remember getting a phone call. I was not in bed yet, it was New Year's Eve, but that we had a horrible accident involving employees at the SUNY, Binghamton SUNY. We had already, in a labor management meeting, voiced our concerns about the safety of nuts and bolts that they had been purchasing to be utilized in some of their equipment on the grounds at SUNY Binghamton. They had saved 43 cents a bolt, and they had gone to what we had expressed was an inferior material. We had talked about this in a labor management meeting. We had asked them to reconsider and go back to what they were doing before. They chose not to. 1 o'clock, New Year's Eve that year, that burst, that piece of equipment burst. It started with one nut giving and worked its way across. One was dead, one was horribly injured and ended up dying, one of our members, and two other people that were working that situation were injured tremendously through that. The same year, a supervisor told one of our employees to ride a lawnmower on a hill. The employee voiced his concerns, asked not to do it, was told if he didn't do it, he would lose his job, and there were plenty of people waiting to take that job over. We documented that. He called his union steward and said he was getting on the piece of equipment, even though it was over his objections. He wanted the right to walk away. Our local president wanted the right to say to him, don't do it. He didn't have that right. He knew the consequences during that time without any law. That person would have been looking for a job the next day. Now, in that case, we may have been able to win it. A year down the road, he gets back wages, well, big deal. That man got on that piece of equipment. It rolled over just like he said it was going to, and he had a heart attack because this 1,600-pound lawnmower couldn't be taken off of him. Those are the things that led to the implementation of that safety and health legislation in New York State. And it's a tragedy. It's a real tragedy, but unfortunately, if those things hadn't happened, I doubt if there would have been a law for 5 or 10 more years than when we got it passed. This union can be proud of the challenge it led on that legislation. Most unions wanted it. Most unions weren't making it a priority. This union did. We never wavered. When we didn't get what we wanted the first year, we kept at it, made it a priority of our political action and legislative program for 3 or 4 years until the point where we mobilized our members, convinced legislators and a governor that it was something that was well needed, over needed, and it's a real plus in this union's feather in our cap.
Sure. Let me now shift forward. Another fairly significant event in CSEA's history was in 1999 when a state contract was voted down by the rank and file membership. What do you remember about those circumstances and what happened as a result of that?
Well, I can remember the contract actually going down. It's an irony. I don't know, it probably could have been avoided, to be very candid. And I think that, let's face it, when we really believe that what we've done is right, we should be proud of that. But I think there may have been a bit of a miscue on that contract, to be very candid. And I voiced my opinion at the time. When I think of that contract period, I can think of my first response to being called and told what the contract was going to give our members. And did I think that it would be enough to be approved? I can distinctly remember I was sitting in the car with another individual when I got the call, and I can remember from my years as a negotiator trying to review the situation that existed with cost of living increases, what other unions have done. We knew it was not going to be a large sum of money. We knew it had to be tempered with avoiding layoffs and everything. My own gut feeling when I was first called was it's a little bit short. I felt that if another 0.5% was able to be achieved, or 0.25% the first year, 0.25% the last year, it may have flown. We'll never know. It was defeated, as you know. And it triggered a year-long effort to voice our concerns with the governor every place he went to, caused us to go back into negotiations and attempt to get a little bit more, which we eventually did. There's no question about it. What was approved by the members that year was a little bit more in the end, but not a sizable amount of money. I don't think it was one of our more successful periods of handling situations, to be very candid.
Okay. There was certainly a whole lot of activity that took place.
Oh,
some,
man.
Memorable events.
Oh, I guess
with
so.
it.
I can remember our picket to the state fair that day and the opening of the state fair. And we clearly mobilized our members, as a matter of fact, to show up that day to drown out the voice of the governor, who had always, governors in the state had always opened up the state fair on the opening day of the state fair. And I'll tell you, we did a fantastic job of shutting him down. Several of us were really threatened with all kinds of things like arrest and everything else. And I can remember to this day, one of the greatest little pictures I got is me and a sergeant with the New York State Police, which I respect tremendously, going just head to head over, I basically said to him, arrest me, take me away. There's someone that's ready to step in for me. If you do, we are not leaving. We are not going to allow this governor to address the people for the opening of the state fair. We feel bad about that, but he needs to get the message. It's time to negotiate. And the union really, I think, delivered that message to him quite well.
There was also another very significant event out of that campaign, and that was at the state capitol in early January of 2000, when the governor was giving his State of the State message. What do you remember about that?
I remember the coldness. I can remember it was so cold that day, and a lot of people were concerned that people would show up. But I think we can be proud of the number of people that not only showed up, but we can also be proud of their actions that day. You bring thousands of people in for a demonstration, you're always worried about, one, are there going to be enough to impact on the press, on the community, on the individual that you're trying to have change their ways? And then two, you're always concerned about, are we going to be able to see to it that they keep us proud, that nothing occurs that reflects negatively on CSEA and therefore the couple 100,000 people that we represent throughout the state. I think we can be very, very proud of those people. I can remember standing there with Carmine DiBattista and Carm Bagnoli, who were presidents, respectively, of Region 3 and 4, and looking out over the crowd and thinking, this is a tremendous event, a tremendous turnout, and we should be very, very proud of that. And our members did well by themselves. They represented themselves fine. And I think it really attributed to us eventually achieving a contract that year.
What do you think the lesson is from that whole situation with that contract fight?
Well, the lesson, there's two lessons. The first one is basically that the union does have an obligation to let its voice be heard. Again, getting back to the issue of having enough dues. Having enough dues to give the incentive for people to come, organize and plan such an event, pay for some buses to get people up there, and see to it that the members are treated right by giving them something to eat or drink on the way up or on the way back, or trying to make it as easy as possible to get people there. That's a responsibility of unions. That's a responsibility we have to our rank and file members. It's up to us to organize. You don't expect the membership to do it without the heads up from the union. The other thing is that with all consequences that are good and bad, the second issue I wanted to raise was it also gave an opportunity, I believe, probably in the history of CSEA, for an incumbent president to be taken out of office, because there was a young lady that day that saw to it that she gave flyers out to every person that got off a bus, and she didn't even realize if they were from her region or not, and that was basically the birth of Kathy Garrison. That day I noticed, and many people in CSEA didn't, that there was someone meeting every bus that came in. And it was Kathy. This is like an aside, but it gives you something on record. I don't know, God only knows what you're going to do with it. And I don't know how you can use it, but I'll tell you something. I noticed that day Kathy Garrison, didn't know her, never met her, out there appealing to people to give her a vote in an election that would be occurring within a 3 or 4 week period. And I still say to this day, that day allowed the forum for someone like Kathy to be elected president of Region 4.
Interesting. Let me ask this. As you look at the way that CSEA has evolved through your time in the organization and the change that's come, As you look forward, what do you think are the great challenges that we face, and what are your thoughts about how we need to change going forward?
I think that we have to we have to continue to make organizing a responsibility and a commitment. I am not an advocate that says drop everything else and organize, because if you just get members and then can't provide them benefits, we would lose the commitment that we've really had to people. In our region, I'm proud, we've gone from 29,000 people to almost 48,000 under my tenure, but I was as comfortable in providing those 48,000 with the kinds of things they needed as I was the 29,000 when I took over 31 years ago. You have to be able to take care of what you've got. Organizing people for just the sake of numbers doesn't mean anything. And when you wander from our original thought, my original thought is, basically my thought is, let me do my job so well as a union activist and a union president, a union leader, that I actually eliminate the need for me to exist. Now, do I think that's going to occur? No. If employers learn to treat people with respect, give them financially what they're entitled to and the employer can afford, and do it on a timely basis, there's no need for a union. So my goal probably would be to see to it that all of the people that I represent, whoever they work for, treats them with respect, gives them benefits. I've been around long enough to know, and I'm certainly enough student of history to know, that's not going to occur for many, many reasons. Usually the quality of the individual you're dealing with on the other side. Some just don't care. Some are too stupid to realize they don't care. And then some want to go out of their way to screw the employees that work for them. I've seen all kinds of employers over the years. But that's also one of the things I think CSEA has to commit itself to, is that we are so good and so effective at what our goal, our long-term goal is, that we basically come up with the need for us not to exist. Directions, I think that obviously we have got to see to it that we try to stay on top of things in terms of the changing world that we live in. We have to also be concerned about the worldwide impact that financial markets have in terms of the workforce of the country. We have got to be continually interested with the elected leadership that represent us on a federal basis, a statewide basis, and more importantly, even a local basis. We have got to continue our fine record of involving ourselves in endorsements and the election of people that are good for CSEA members, regardless of whether they're Republican or Democrat. We need to continue our long-standing policy of being beholden to no particular party. That's been a real plus for CSEA, and I think a real minus for some of the unions that have basically just tied their apron strings to the Democratic Party. And I think they're now going through the negative effects of that over the last 10, 20, 30 years. We have to continue to develop new leaders in CSEA. Mary Sullivan, through her program, the LEAD program, has been, I think, one of the most inspiring things I've seen in CSEA in the past 30 years. We are having people come, volunteer, give us a big part of their lives for a year, and we train them basically to go back to their work locations and do the same kind of things that they're learning to do when they're in Albany or they're at a workshop or a forum. We have so damn much going for us that's great as a union that, I have no doubts that a year from now we'll be stronger. When we hit our 100th anniversary, our anniversary in 2010, we will be stronger than we are today. It's just a good place to work.
Well, that's a perfect transition. Let me ask you why you think CSEA has been able to survive and thrive for 100 years.
Well, for many of the reasons that we've talked about, I think the flexibility, we haven't lost our ability to be a family. Coming together the way we do as staff once a year and getting to know the people that work 300 miles from us in another part of the state, I think is a good thing. any communication that allows us to, on a daily basis, know when one of us is hurting, be it elected or a staff member in CSEA, is another good thing. The continued opportunity to take part in programs, union programs, union activist programs is another good thing. That's been offered over the years, and I think that that's helped us as a union. I think there's probably a lot we need to do at the same time to make ourselves even stronger. I'm a real advocate for strategic planning. I like to spend some time considering what I think will be the problems a year down the road, or 5 years down the road, or 10 years down the road. I'm an advocate for trying to attempt to find those solutions before the problem actually occurs. I think it saves a hell of a lot of time and a lot of money. And I'm wondering right now, it's like, I'm trying to think in terms of what's kept us strong. I don't want to repeat. I mean, I think that, again, the Constitution, rank and file members involved, staff, et cetera, it's a combination of so much that's kept us strong.
Any areas that we haven't talked about that you'd like to weigh in on?
Well, it's a little bit early, but I think maybe utilization of real activists after they retire and move on. I'm having a real hard time with the day-to-day loss of personality exchange. Working for so long that I did with people, I don't miss the issues. I don't miss, at this stage of my life, not having problems to solve. I do miss the interaction in dealing with the utilization of people to solve those problems. If you can understand what I'm saying is, it's like leaving, I've heard so many from people, there is a life after CSEA. Well, there may be, but I think that CSEA prepares us for such a life while we're here. And it gives us the opportunity to impact on other people in hundreds of ways, literally hundreds of ways, whether you're an activist or a staff member, that is so fulfilling doing our job for CSEA that I think we miss that part of it afterwards. So, I mean, right now I'm thinking in terms of trying to organize retirees to come up with something to do, because I think that it's probably an untapped resource out there. And I'm not just speaking about New York State, I'm talking about all over the country. There is such a need right now to use people that were quick to say, yeah, I want to be a union member. Yeah, I believe in unions. Yeah, I'm willing to give you 10 hours a month to see to it that some worker benefits from my giving 10 hours. I think the need is out there. And I also think that we have a self-serving interest as retirees, union people that have retired, regardless of what union you're from. We demand a level of being treated both financially, socially, and politically as peers by our elected officials. And I think that to organize all of those of us that are out there might not be a bad way to spend the rest of my career.